The Vex attack began without warning. Admiral Korth decided the humans had been given enough time to surrender. Their continued presence in Empire space was an insult that demanded immediate punishment. He gave the order to fire with the casual tone of someone asking for dinner. The first barrage hit 3 ships simultaneously. The Morning Star exploded in a ball of white fire, taking 47 rescue workers with her. The ship carried oxygen generators that could have saved the entire mining colony. Now they were scattered atoms drifting in space, Captain. Hyun watched in horror as the gentle wave disappeared next. That ship held all their medical equipment and Chief Medical Officer Park, So Young, who was Nari's older sister. The woman had volunteered for the mission. Even though her own daughter was getting married next week, she wanted to help the sick children on New Busan Colony. The massacre continued for 18 minutes and 37 seconds. Cho-bin recorded every moment as her friends died around her. The communication officer kept working even as her own ship shook from near misses. She knew someone had to tell the truth about what happened here. Rescue ship after rescue ship exploded under Vex fire. The Evening Grace carrying evacuation pods. The Dawn Light full of emergency food supplies, the Helping Hand with its portable hospital equipment. 800 volunteers who came to save lives died, trying to understand why anyone would murder people. Carrying medical supplies, Park. Nari screamed when she saw her sister's ship explode. The chief engineer tried to run to the escape pods, but Kim Tae held her back. There was nowhere to run and no one to fight. The Vex ships surrounded them completely and seemed to enjoy watching humans die slowly. The Sunrise Hope survived, only because it was the command ship Hyun kept moving, using what little engine power they had left to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. His ship took dozens of hits, but the hull held together barely. The bridge filled with smoke and half the crew was injured or dead young. Cho-bin had burns on her arms from an exploding console, but she never stopped recording. Her camera captured the faces of dying volunteers as they sent final messages to their families. She filmed the rescue supplies burning in space while 3,000 people waited for help that would never come. Engineer Park Nari crawled to her station with a broken leg and kept the life support running. Her sister was dead, but 43 crew members still needed air to breathe. The woman worked through her tears and rage, making sure the survivors would live long enough to tell Earth what happened. Dr. Kim Tae moved through the ship treating wounded crew members with supplies meant for the mining colony. He had morphine for 20 people, but 30 needed treatment. The medical officer made impossible choices about who would live and who would die in agony. The Vex Admiral broadcast his message when the shooting stopped. This sector belongs to the Empire. All trespassers will be destroyed. Your mercy mission ends here. Human animals, let this be a lesson to your weak species. Then the alien fleet simply left. They did not board the damaged human ship or take prisoners. They did not even collect salvage from the destroyed vessels. The Vex commander treated the massacre like target practice against defenseless opponents, something to improve crew performance before real battles. Captain Hyun stood on his broken bridge surrounded by the bodies of good people who died, trying to save strangers. Communication officer Cho-bin was still alive, but barely. Her recording equipment was damaged, but still working. The young woman had documented everything for the 18 minutes of hell. The distress signals from New Busan Colony continued broadcasting. Every hour more civilians died from bad air and failing systems. The rescue convoy that was their only hope now drifted as burning wreckage. The medical supplies they desperately needed were scattered across light years of empty space park. Nari limped to her captain with tears and fury in her eyes. They killed my sister. She was carrying medicine for dying children. What kind of monsters do that? Her voice broke as she spoke, but her hands still worked on keeping their ship alive. Kim Tae finished treating the last wounded crew member and came to report 43 survivors out of 800 volunteers, Captain. Many have injuries that need proper treatment, but we can keep them alive. The doctor's voice was calm, but his eyes showed pure rage. Hyun looked at the tactical display showing debris fields where his friends used to be rescue ships that carried teachers who left their classrooms to help engineers who abandoned good jobs to save people they never met. Doctors who could have stayed safe in Earth hospitals but chose to risk everything for strangers. The captain made a decision that would change the galaxy. He ordered Chobin to transmit everything back to Earth, the complete battle recording, every face of the murdered volunteers, every second of the unprovoked attack, every word the Vex Admiral spoke while destroying defenseless rescue ships. Chobin's hands shook as she prepared the transmission. Sir, the Vex might intercept this and track us. They could come back to finish what they started. Hyun looked at his communications officer with steel in his voice. Let them come. Earth needs to know what happened to our people. The galaxy needs to know what the Vex Empire does to rescue missions. The data package launched toward Earth, carrying the testimony of 43 survivors and the death recordings of 800 heroes. It would take 36 hours to reach home, but when it arrived, everything would change. The message contained proof that some acts could never be forgiven. As the transmission disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Lee Hyun stood among the wreckage of humanity's mercy and made a promise to the dead volunteers around him. The Vex Empire just learned what happened when someone fired on Earth's rescue convoys. They were about to discover that humans who died saving strangers had friends who would fight twice as hard to avenge them. The mining colony's distress signals grew weaker every hour. 3,000 people dying slowly, while the supplies meant to save them burned in space. But their deaths would not be forgotten, and their killers would pay a price beyond imagination. The transmission from the massacre site reached Earth Command at 14:22 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. President Yoon Sura was in a budget meeting discussing school funding when Admiral Jang Minho burst through her office doors without ceremony. His face was white with shock and rage. Madam President, you need to see this immediately. He activated the wall screen and played Chobin's recording. The images were devastating. Rescue ships exploding, volunteers screaming final messages to their families, medical supplies burning in space while innocent people died on distant worlds. President Yoon watched in silence as 800 of Earth's best people died trying to save strangers. The volunteers came from every nation and every walk of life: teachers who left their students, engineers who abandoned profitable careers, doctors who could have stayed safe in comfortable hospitals. The recording played for 18 minutes and 37 seconds. When it ended, the president sat in her chair, staring at the blank screen. Her daughter had applied for rescue service last year. The young woman wanted to carry medical supplies to disaster zones across human space. Call an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Yoon's voice was steady, but her hands shook with suppressed fury. Contact every news network and broadcast this footage. The world needs to see what happened to our children. Within 2 hours, the massacre footage played on screens across Earth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. In Seoul, crowds gathered silently in the rain holding pictures of the murdered volunteers. In New Tokyo, factory workers walked out of their jobs demanding action against the Vex Empire. The images that hit hardest showed volunteers sending final messages. Park So-young telling her daughter she loved her as her ship exploded. Teacher Min Kang asking someone to feed his cat. Dr. Lee Sung promising her husband she would come home soon. The personal moments of good people dying for helping others. Public anger built like a rising storm. Citizens who never cared about politics suddenly understood that something sacred had been violated. The Vex didn't just kill humans, they murdered the best of humanity. While those people carried bandages and medicine to save dying strangers, Fleet Admiral Jang Minho presented military options to the Emergency Council. Earth had 600 warships, but they were designed for exploration and patrol duty. The Navy existed to protect trade routes and rescue stranded ships, not to fight massive interstellar wars. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Vex Empire controlled 40 star systems with battle fleets that had conquered dozens of species. Their technology was proven in countless wars, while Earth's weapons existed mostly on paper. Human military doctrine focused on peacekeeping, not destroying enemies. The smart choice would be diplomatic protests through the Galactic Council economic sanctions that might force the Vex to pay reparations. Safe responses that avoided a war Earth might lose badly. The president's advisors recommended caution and careful planning before any military action. But President Yoon remembered her daughter's application for rescue service. The young woman wanted to help people in distant places carry hope to those who had none. The president imagined that daughter burning in space while aliens laughed at human weakness. The Global Defense Council met for 6 hours. Representatives from every nation on Earth watched the massacre footage again and again. Some delegates wept openly, others sat in angry silence. All of them reached the same conclusion independently. Defense Minister Park Dong from Korea spoke first. Those volunteers represented the soul of our species. They died carrying medicine to children and oxygen to the dying. If we do nothing, then we tell the galaxy that murdering Earth's mercy missions has no consequences. Ambassador Chen Wei from the Chinese Federation agreed. The Vex Empire thinks kindness is weakness. They believe compassion makes us easy targets. We must prove that humans who risk everything to save strangers will fight twice as hard to avenge them. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth authorized total military mobilization. Every shipyard would convert civilian vessels into warships. Every factory would stop making consumer goods and start producing weapons. Earth prepared for war, not because they wanted territory or conquest, but because some acts demanded justice. President Yoon addressed the planet that evening from the same office where she first saw the massacre footage. Behind her desk stood pictures of the 800 murdered volunteers. Their faces looked down as she spoke to 6 billion humans. The Vex Empire believes that mercy is weakness. They think our compassion makes us vulnerable. They fired on defenseless rescue ships carrying medicine to dying children. Today we prove them wrong. President's voice grew stronger as she continued. We go to war not for land or resources, but for the memory of those who died trying to save strangers. We fight so that every species in the galaxy knows what happens when someone murders Earth's mercy missions. Mobilization began immediately. Civilian shipyards that built luxury yachts started installing weapon systems. College students left their classes to design new military technology. Retired soldiers returned to active duty alongside millions of volunteers who had never held weapons. The transformation was unprecedented in human history. A peaceful species that spent generations exploring and helping others suddenly focused all their energy on preparing for war. The smartest minds that once worked on medical research now designed instruments of destruction. But this was not conquest or expansion. Earth's war machine built itself around one simple concept. Those who died carrying bandages and oxygen to strangers deserved justice. The volunteers who burned in space while trying to save 3,000 miners would not be forgotten. Admiral Jang Minho took command of the largest military force in human history. Over 2,000 ships ranging from converted cargo haulers to purpose-built battleships. Every vessel carried pictures of the massacre victims, reminding crews why they fought. The fleet would launch in 8 months after training and preparation. Earth's military had never fought a real war, but they learned, fast driven by righteous anger and the memory of murdered volunteers. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when a peaceful species decided that some crimes could never be forgiven. As the war machine built itself, President Yoon kept the massacre footage playing in her office. She watched it every day to remember why Earth was going to war. The images of good people dying while carrying medical supplies to strangers would fuel humanity's transformation from explorers to warriors. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of his ship Sunrise Hope and looked at the stars ahead. He had been flying rescue missions for 12 years, but this one felt different. The distress call from New Busan mining colony came 3 days ago, and it was bad. Really bad. The message was simple but terrible. Their life support systems failed during a massive asteroid storm. 3,000 people were trapped underground with only 5 days of air left. Most of them were families, women and children, who came to the outer rim looking for a better life. Now they were dying slowly in the dark. Earth sent 12 ships to help. The convoy carried everything needed to save those people. Oxygen generators that could keep a whole city breathing, medical equipment to treat the injured, evacuation pods to bring people home. Food and water for the long journey back to safety. Hyun walked through his ship and saw his crew preparing for the rescue. Chief Engineer Park Nari was checking the life support. equipment she designed. These machines could turn any ship into a temporary hospital. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, making sure everything worked perfectly. She lost her own parents in a mining accident when she was young. That made her better at saving other people. Medical Officer Kim Tae spoke 7 different alien languages. He joined Earth Rescue Services after seeing too much death in the outer colonies. The man could perform surgery in zero gravity and had once saved an entire ship full of sick children. Kim never talked about his past, but everyone knew he used to work in the worst places in the galaxy. Communications Officer Cho Bin was the youngest crew member at 24 years old. She volunteered for rescue work because her sister died in a transport accident. No one came to help that time because the area was too dangerous. Bin made sure that would never happen again. She recorded everything so families would know what happened to their loved ones. The Convoy moved through space under the Universal Mercy flag. Every civilized species in the galaxy recognized that white banner with the red cross. It meant these ships carried no weapons and threatened no one. They existed only to save lives and help people in trouble. The flag had protected rescue missions for over 200 years. Hyun looked at the star charts and felt worried. They were entering disputed territory. The Vex Empire claimed this sector belonged to them, but no one really controlled the outer rim. These areas were too far from any homeworld and too dangerous for regular patrols. Most species avoided conflict zones and left them alone. The captain had met Vex soldiers before during his military service. They were tall, gray-skinned, beings with 4 arms and no emotions. Their society worshipped strength and conquest. They built their empire by destroying weaker species and taking their worlds. But they usually left rescue missions alone. Everyone did. 2 hours into the danger, zone long-range sensors detected movement. 12 ships appeared on the screen moving fast toward the human convoy. The computer identified them as Vex military vessels, heavy cruisers with enough firepower to destroy small planets. They were not exploring or patrolling. They were hunting. Hyun tried to communicate with the approaching fleet. He broadcast on all emergency frequencies using every language in the database. The message was simple and clear. 12 human ships on humanitarian mission. No weapons aboard. Only medical supplies and rescue equipment. Request permission to continue to New Busan colony to save civilian lives. The Vex ships kept coming. They moved into attack formation surrounding the convoy like predators circling prey. Their weapons powered up and targeting systems locked onto the defenseless human vessels, but they did not respond to any communications. They just watched and waited. Park Nari came to the bridge with worry in her eyes. She had been monitoring Vex transmissions using illegal equipment. The aliens were talking about target practice and weak prey animals. They called the rescue convoy a gift from their war gods, something easy to destroy for training purposes. Kim Tae joined them carrying his medical bag. The doctor always prepared for the worst. He had treated survivors of Vex attacks before. Their weapons caused terrible burns that never healed properly and poison that stayed in the blood for years. The aliens designed their guns to cause maximum suffering, not quick death. Cho Bin sat at her station recording everything. Her job was to document rescue missions for Earth Command. But now she was creating evidence of something much worse. The young woman checked her equipment twice, making sure every word and image would reach home base. The Vex fleet stopped moving when they reached optimal firing position. 30 kilometers away from the convoy, close enough to hit every target, but far enough to avoid debris. The alien commander finally opened a communication channel. His voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "You are in Empire space. Human animals. Turn back or face destruction." Hyun responded immediately. "We are on humanitarian rescue mission. 3,000 civilians dying on New Busan colony. We carry only medical supplies and life support equipment. We request passage under Universal Mercy protocols." The Vex commander laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "There is no mercy in Empire space, only strength. Turn back or die." Captain Hyun looked at his crew. They were good people who left their families to save strangers. Park Nari had a husband and 2 children waiting at home. Kim Tae was supposed to marry his partner next month. Cho Bin sent letters. to her mother every day telling her about the people they helped. The mining colony was still broadcasting distress signals. Every hour their situation got worse. Children were already getting sick from bad air. Old people were dying from heart problems, caused by low oxygen. The rescue convoy was their only hope for survival. Hyun made his decision. We continue to New Busan colony. These people need our help. The Vex ships moved closer, their weapons charged to full power. The energy readings were massive, enough to crack moon surfaces, but still they waited like cats playing with mice before the killing bite park. Nari whispered to her captain, "Sir, I have a bad feeling about this. My equipment shows they are preparing to fire." Kim Tae checked his emergency medical kit one more time. If anyone survived the next few minutes, they would need all the help they could get. The doctor had seen what Vex weapons did to living beings. It was not something anyone should experience. Cho-bin kept recording as the two fleets faced each other in the darkness of space. 12 defenseless rescue ships surrounded by Vex warships. The human crews were teachers, engineers, doctors, and volunteers who never held weapons in their lives. They came to save people, not to fight wars. The last transmission from New Busan colony came through the speakers, a woman's voice speaking for all the trapped miners. "Please hurry, we are running out of time. The children are so scared. Please don't let us die. Alone." Captain Lee, Hyun looked at the Vex ships and made a promise to those dying people. "We are coming. Hold on just a little longer." He never imagined that in 18 minutes, his rescue convoy would be burning wreckage floating in space, and the galaxy would learn what happened when someone fired on Earth's mercy missions. The transformation of Earth's military began with volunteers standing in recruitment lines that stretched for kilometers, were people who never imagined themselves as soldiers. College student Bei Wu left his engineering studies to design weapon systems for the war effort. The young man had watched the massacre footage 50 times and decided his math skills could help kill Vex ship's factory worker Song Hana learned to pilot fighter craft while her 3 children stayed with their grandparents. The woman worked double shifts building starship components before the war, but now she wanted to personally deliver justice to the aliens who murdered rescue workers. She studied flight manuals every night after training. Retired teacher Oh Dong became a tactical analyst using his chess skills to plan battle strategies. The old man had taught kindergarten for 30 years, but the massacre footage filled him with cold rage. He spent 12 hours a day studying Vex military doctrine, looking for weaknesses in their formations. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, converting civilian vessels into instruments of war. The luxury yacht. Peaceful Waters became the attack ship. Righteous Fury, after engineers installed missile launchers, where the swimming pool used to be. Even garbage haulers got weapon upgrades and joined the growing fleet captain. Lee Hyun recovered from his injuries in a military hospital while his new command took shape. The battleship never again was built, specifically to hunt Vex warships. Her hull could absorb punishment that would destroy smaller vessels. Her weapons could crack planets. Her crew consisted of massacre survivors and volunteers, seeking revenge. Engineer Park Nari designed shield systems, powered by pure determination to prevent more innocent deaths. She worked 18-hour days creating defenses that could protect rescue ships from future attacks. The woman's sister died carrying medical supplies, but her death would not be meaningless. Survivors of the rescue convoy became symbols of Earth's military transformation. They had seen Vex cruelty firsthand and lived to tell the story. Their testimony during training sessions reduced hardened soldiers to tears and filled them with unbreakable resolve. Dr. Kim Tae joined the Medical Corps training field surgeons for combat conditions. He had treated the convoy survivors and knew exactly what Vex weapons did to human bodies. The man developed new surgical techniques for battlefield medicine while planning how to use his knowledge against enemy forces. Communication Officer Cho-bin became Earth's most important propaganda asset. Her recording of the massacre played in every training facility and aboard every warship. The young woman spoke to recruits about watching her friends die while carrying medicine to strangers. Her words turned civilians into warriors. The human fleet grew from 600 ships to over 2,000 in just 8 months. Cargo haulers became troop. Transports racing ships became fast attack craft. Even civilian shuttles got armor plating and joined the war effort. Every vessel carried pictures of the murdered volunteers. Training focused on the fundamental difference between human and Vex military. Philosophy. The aliens fought for conquest and personal glory, while Earth's forces fought to protect innocent lives. This difference would prove decisive in the battles ahead. Admiral Zhang Minho addressed his commanders during final preparations. We are not conquerors seeking territory. We are not raiders hunting for treasure. We are the representatives of 800 murdered volunteers who died carrying medical supplies to dying children. Intelligence reports revealed the structure of Vex society, a militant civilization that respected only strength and viewed mercy as a fatal weakness. They had destroyed dozens of peaceful species by exploiting their compassion. The rescue convoy wasn't their first atrocity, just their first. Against humans, diplomatic attempts at negotiation failed completely. Earth's ambassadors offered to discuss the incident through proper channels. The Vex response was simple and brutal. They sent back the heads of 3 human diplomats along with a message calling Earth's species soft prey animals unworthy of consideration. This final insult sealed the Vex Empire's fate. President Yoon authorized the military to use any means necessary to achieve victory. The gloves came off and Earth's war machine prepared to teach the galaxy what happened when someone murdered people carrying bandages to strangers. The fleet assembled in Earth orbit on a cold morning in March. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 2,000 warships prepare for humanity's first real war. Each vessel carried volunteers who left comfortable lives to avenge murdered rescue workers. Captain Hyun commanded the Never Again from the same captain's chair where he watched his friends die. His crew included survivors from the massacre alongside fresh volunteers seeking justice. They had trained for 8 months, learning how to fight aliens who thought mercy was weakness. The final message to the Vex Empire was broadcast on all frequencies. We are coming. You fired on a rescue convoy carrying medical supplies to dying civilians. You killed 800 volunteers whose only crime was trying to save strangers. Now you will learn what happens when Earth goes to war. The largest military force in human history launched toward enemy territory, carrying the fury of a species that valued helping others more than their own lives. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when peaceful people decided that some acts could never be forgiven. Each ship carried one simple motto painted on their hulls. They thought mercy was weakness. The Vex Empire was about to discover their terrible mistake in the fires of interstellar war. The first battle took place at the edge of Vex space near the Crimson Nebula, where ancient stars died in slow explosions. The human fleet faced 80 Vex warships commanded by Admiral Korth, the same alien who ordered the rescue convoy massacre. He expected an easy victory against the weak humans who mourned their dead instead of seeking practical revenge. Admiral Korth had studied the massacre recordings with amusement. These soft creatures cried over volunteers who died carrying medical supplies to strangers. They built monuments to honor people who sacrificed themselves for others. Such emotional weakness would make them easy to defeat in real combat. The Vex formation spread across space in a traditional battle line designed to maximize firepower while protecting command ships. Their tactics had conquered dozens of species over 3 centuries. Each victory proved that mercy was a luxury only the strong could afford. Earth's fleet approached in a formation that confused Vex tactical officers. Human ships moved in tight clusters around their largest vessels instead of spreading out for maximum coverage. The pattern looked defensive, almost cowardly to alien observers who measured courage by aggression. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of Never Again, surrounded by crew members who had watched their friends die in the rescue convoy massacre. Engineer Park Nari kept the shields running while thinking of her sister, who burned in space carrying medicine. To children pilot song, Hana prepared her fighter squadron to protect the larger ships like a mother defending her family. The battle began at dawn ship time. When the 2 fleets came within weapons range, Admiral Korth opened fire first using the standard Vex tactic of overwhelming bombardment. His ships launched thousands of missiles designed to break enemy formations through sheer destructive force. But something unexpected happened when the human fleet took damage. Instead of retreating or spreading out for survival, Earth ships moved closer together. Their formation tightened as vessels shared shield power and protected wounded neighbors. This behavior violated every known principle of space. Combat Vex officers watched in confusion, as damaged human ships refused to withdraw. Instead, they rammed themselves into enemy vessels while broadcasting the names of massacre victims. A cargo hauler full of volunteers flew directly into a Vex cruiser while screaming, "Remember Park, so." Young who died carrying oxygen generators. The psychological impact was devastating. Vex commanders had never faced opponents who gained strength from protecting others. Their military doctrine assumed that damaged enemies would retreat to save themselves, but these humans fought harder when their friends were hurt. Song Hana led her fighter squadron through impossible maneuvers, weaving between the massive capital ships. Her pilots flew with desperate courage, knowing that every Vex ship they destroyed was justice for the murdered volunteers. She personally rammed her fighter into the bridge of an enemy destroyer. The tide of battle turned when Admiral Korth's flagship came under direct assault. 3 human ships approached his vessel simultaneously, ignoring the massive defensive fire. Their commanders broadcast the same message. "We are the voices of 800 murdered volunteers who died trying to save strangers." Captain Hyun led the charge and never again. His ship's hull glowing red from repeated hits. Park Nari kept the engines running even as explosions tore through the engineering deck. The woman worked through smoke and flame, thinking of her sister's final message, asking someone to take care of her daughter. The ramming attack succeeded beyond all strategic planning. 3 human vessels struck the Vex flagship at the same moment, creating a combined explosion visible from the edge of the star system. Admiral Korth died screaming as his bridge collapsed around him. The alien who ordered the massacre became particles of dust drifting in space. With their commander dead and their formation broken, the surviving Vex ships began to retreat. But they discovered something terrifying about human tactical doctrine. Earth's forces had surrounded the battlefield, cutting off all escape routes. No alien vessel would leave to report this defeat. The massacre continued for 6 hours as human ships hunted down fleeing enemies. One by one, the Vex vessels died under concentrated fire. Their crews abandoned ship rather than face humans who valued other people's lives more than their own survival. When the shooting stopped, only 12 Vex ships had escaped from the original 80. The human fleet suffered heavy losses but achieved total victory. Most importantly, they captured detailed records of Vex military communications, including plans for future attacks on civilian targets. Captain Hyun surveyed the battlefield from his damaged bridge. The space around the Crimson Nebula was filled with burning Vex wreckage and the scattered remains of human ships whose crews died avenging the rescue convoy. His tactical officer reported 47 Earth vessels destroyed with their crews, but they had won something more important than a military victory. The battle recordings showed Vex crews abandoning their ships when faced with humans who fought for murdered volunteers. These proud warriors who conquered galaxies ran away from opponents who cared more about others than themselves. Park Nari limped to her captain with burns covering her arms but pride shining in her eyes. "Sir, we made them pay for killing the rescue convoy. My sister and all those volunteers can rest, knowing we got justice for them." The news of Earth's victory spread through Vex space faster than their surviving ships could travel. Alien commanders who had never retreated from battle fled when they heard about humans who fought with the fury of people avenging murdered healers. As rescue teams searched the wreckage for survivors, they made remarkable discoveries. Many Vex crew members surrendered rather than die fighting. These aliens who built their civilization on strength abandoned their posts when faced with opponents who found power in protecting others. The first battle was over, but the war had just begun. Earth's fleet regrouped and prepared to advance deeper into enemy territory. Each victory would bring them closer to the Vex homeworld where the orders for the rescue convoy massacre originated. Captain Lee Hyun stood among the floating debris of the enemy fleet and made a promise to the dead volunteers whose names were painted on his ship's hull. "This is only the beginning. We will not stop until every person who participated in murdering our rescue convoy pays the ultimate price." The galaxy was learning what happened when someone fired on Earth's mercy missions. They discovered that humans who died trying to save strangers had friends who would fight with the strength of angels and the fury of demons to avenge them. The war continued for 18 brutal months as Earth's forces carved a path of destruction through Vex territory. Each battle followed the same pattern. Alien commanders expected easy victories over soft humans, only to face opponents who fought with desperate courage because they were protecting innocent lives throughout the galaxy. On every liberated world, human soldiers discovered the full scope of Vex atrocities, slave camps holding millions of beings from conquered species. Research facilities where alien scientists conducted horrific experiments on captured civilians. Breeding centers where entire populations were raised as disposable labor for the Empire's war machine. Captain Lee Hyun walked through a liberated slave camp. On the fourth planet of the Zerion system, thousands of beings from dozens of species had been worked to death, mining rare metals for Vex warships. The survivors could barely speak after years of torture and starvation. Engineer Park Nari found records showing that her sister's rescue convoy was just the latest atrocity in a long list of crimes. The Vex had been destroying mercy missions for decades, believing that targeting healers and teachers would break their enemies' will to fight. They were completely wrong about human nature. Dr. Kim Tae worked around the clock treating liberated prisoners whose injuries defied medical explanation. The Vex had developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. Their torture methods were refined over centuries of practice on helpless victims. Each discovery hardened Earth's resolve and justified the total war they were fighting. The rescue convoy volunteers died trying to save 3,000 miners, but their deaths exposed a civilization built entirely on cruelty and exploitation. The galaxy would be better when the Vex Empire no longer existed. Communication Officer Cho Bin documented everything for the War Crimes Tribunal that would follow Earth's victory. Her recordings showed millions of victims whose only crime was belonging to species too weak to defend themselves. The evidence would ensure that surviving Vex leaders faced justice. The final assault on the Vex homeworld began on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 years after the rescue convoy massacre. Earth's fleet had grown to over 3,000 ships as liberated worlds contributed their own vessels to the human cause. President Yoon Sura personally commanded the invasion force. The Vex homeworld's defenses were impressive orbital stations bristling with weapons, massive fleets protecting the approaches, minefields that stretched for millions of kilometers. But the defenders faced enemies who fought not for conquest, but for justice, and that made all the difference. Song Hana led the first wave of fighters through the defensive perimeter. Her squadron included pilots from 12 different species, all united by hatred for the Vex Empire. She broadcast the names of massacre victims as her weapons, tore through enemy formations. Remember those who died carrying medical supplies. The planetary shields fell within hours as human ships rammed themselves into the generators. Their crews died screaming the names of murdered volunteers, but their sacrifice opened the way for the main assault. The defenders watched in terror as opponents who valued others' lives charged through walls of fire. Admiral Jang Minho commanded the orbital bombardment from his flagship, while President Yoon prepared for the surface invasion. Every human commander carried pictures of the 800 volunteers whose deaths started this war. They would not stop until every Vex leader responsible for the massacre paid with their lives. The Vex Emperor, Zarthak, tried to negotiate surrender when his capital city came under direct attack. He offered reparations territory, even his own exile in exchange for sparing his world. But Earth's forces remembered 3,000 miners dying while their rescue supplies burned in space. The surrender ceremony took place aboard the human flagship Sunrise Memorial, in a cargo hold deliberately filled with medical supplies and rescue equipment. President Yoon wanted the defeated aliens to understand exactly why their empire was ending. They had fired on people carrying bandages and oxygen to dying strangers. Emperor Zarthak signed the unconditional surrender with shaking hands while surrounded by evidence of his people's crimes. The terms were simple: all enslaved, populations freed immediately, massive reparations for war crimes, permanent monitoring to prevent future aggression, complete dismantling of the Vex military. But the most important consequence was psychological. The galaxy learned that Earth's peaceful nature had limits. Humans would trade and explore and help anyone in need. but fire on their rescue missions and face a species that fought harder for others than most fought for themselves. Captain Lee Hyun returned to Earth aboard a new rescue ship, the Eternal Hope. In his cargo hold, he carried medical supplies for the next emergency, along with volunteers ready to risk their lives helping strangers. The cycle of mercy continued, but now under the protection of humans who had proven their strength. The Vex Empire learned too late that mercy and kindness were not signs of weakness but sources of humanity's greatest power. They discovered that people who died trying to save strangers had friends willing to burn down galaxies to avenge them. The rescue convoy volunteers became legends throughout civilized space teachers and engineers and doctors who left their families to carry hope to distant worlds. Their deaths triggered the most decisive military campaign in galactic history, proving that some sacrifices echo through eternity. Years later, when alien species faced disasters or emergencies, they would call for Earth's rescue services, knowing that human volunteers would come, no matter how dangerous the journey. And every pirate or warlord or empire that considered attacking those mercy missions remembered what happened to the Vex. The galaxy learned that humans were the most dangerous species to have as enemies, but the most valuable to have as friends. They would share their knowledge, heal the sick, and defend the weak, but harm their people while they were saving lives and face warriors who fought with the combined fury of 800 murdered angels. The story ended where it began, with rescue ships carrying medical supplies to people in need. But now those vessels flew under the protection of the most feared military force in known space. The same species that built hospitals on alien worlds would destroy entire civilizations to protect their healers. Earth's lesson to the galaxy was simple and permanent. Fire on our rescue convoys and discover what happens when a species that values mercy above everything else decides that justice matters more than peace. The Vex Empire paid that price with their civilization and their lives.